Manas Baum is on the show and he's doing a live demo of Kairos. His AI intern that runs outbound, does lead research, and checks in on your business while you sleep. You can literally share your screen, walk it through a task once, and it takes over from there. No workflow builder, no technical support, just qualified leads in minutes. Stick around and you will know exactly how to hand off your most repetitive business task to an AI agent today.
Okay, Manas. What is Kairos? Like, explain it to me as somebody who might be a non-AI business owner.
Totally. So Kairos is an AI intern for small business owners and solopreneurs. What is an AI intern, right? Like I'm sure like, if you're not living under a rock, you've probably heard of AI, right? You've probably used ChatGPT at least once in a while to ask some questions. And with Kairos, the idea is you can actually get this AI to go out and do work for you. And the reason we're calling it an intern is, look, the models are good enough right now, like these AI models, where they can reason through and then perform actions for you for certain tasks that your small business would require you to do. And it's just a lot cheaper for you to run it with Kairos. But it's not at the level of an employee yet. So we're not going out and saying, hey, Kairos is your AI employee. Like you don't need to hire anyone. We're saying, come in and use Kairos. It's like an intern. It gets better over time. The tasks that it can do right now are like limited, but then it does it fairly well. And with the capabilities and the product improving, you'll just be able to go out and do more and more valuable work for you. And so the way we think of it is like a lot of small businesses don't actually have the capacity to hire many other folks, but they still end up drowning in like all of the sales, customers, like customer service stuff, whether it's leads, like all of that is managed by like one or maybe two people, and they're not able to actually like grow the business or spend time in investing in newer opportunities. And their lack of time leads them to not try all these like different workflow builders, which take 3 to 4 hours just to learn and set up. With Kairos, it's like you come in, you sign in, and then within 5 minutes, it's up and ready to go. And the product is like designed in a way where you can simply come in and Kairos will kind of guide you through the steps of getting it to work. So it's very like self-taught in some sense, like very intuitive, and that's kind of like the experience we're going for. An AI intern that you can use to do like all of the repetitive work inside of your business is the vision.
So, why did you decide to build this?
Oh yeah, great question. So this was me and my co-founder. We started building this last year as like a side project initially. This was the time when like Claude, Sonnet 3.5, 3.7, all of those were coming out, and like the early versions of Claude Code were released. And we were like, man, these agents are absolutely incredible when we're using them at like our software engineering jobs. And we were like, why can't they be used for more non-technical stuff? Like, why can't they be used to go out and generate leads or like reach out to people or like entirely close that loop and then do even more abstract stuff that is useful for businesses? And so we started experimenting and we realized that building these agents is, there's obviously like hard parts to it, but the largest barrier is actually like the usage of these agents that people end up building. And what we saw at that point was whoever was building these agents, they were just so clunky to use, like these drag and drop workflow builders, that most people never actually took the effort to learn how to actually automate their workflows inside of a product like that. And the other thing is we realized that these models were getting so good where you didn't necessarily need to have a predetermined workflow as such. You could just give it like a very vague text prompt, and then the model will kind of figure out the steps to execute that work. And so that's how we kind of started Kairos, and then it's just like grown and evolved so much over time.
But I'm thinking, see, if I'm using Cloud Code so much, or let's say another Codex tool so much, can't I just spin up my own agents and actually do this end to end? Like, isn't the capabilities getting there very fast?
Yeah, so the thing with Claude Code and like all of these tools that Claude ends up releasing is most of them still end up running only on your computer. And so like the analogy that is kind of running around right now is that there are going to be two types of agents in some sense. One is going to be like this co-pilot, like somebody sitting beside you, you need to do something, and then with instead of you doing it in like 10 minutes, this agent operates inside of your computer and does it within like a minute. That's very much similar to this software engineering adoption of agents that ended up happening. Cursor's main value proposition was the tab, right? Instead of you writing out an entire print statement, the moment you write PR, Cursor is like, oh, I know what you mean, and then it'll autocomplete for you. And so that's where the agents are right now, which are running on your computer with like Claude Cowork, which is like this Claude Code, try to be Claude Code for non-technical people. But the way we see it is like the larger value unlock for folks is going to be when this thing transitions from just being a co-pilot to it being like an autopilot, where these agents are like almost like their own entities. They have their own computers, they eventually have their own phone numbers, like they are probably talking to each other. Like a glimpse of that was probably something that OpenClaw kind of showed the world, where you could that's why people went out and bought all of their OpenClaws like a
Mac
Mac
Mini.
Mini. Yeah, like
Yes.
I know people in SF who were telling me that all these Apple Store employees were so confused. Like, we're running out of Mac Minis so fast, and that was just like a glimpse of where this goes. Obviously, it's not scalable. Not everyone's going to buy like a computer for your agent, but I think that's kind of like the future of like autopilots versus like a co-pilot that works with you versus an autopilot where you can give it a more vague task. It can take like multiple hours to actually go out and execute it. Like you can say something like, hey, I'm building like this podcast, and you can define like the specific niche and the kinds of things you're doing, and then this autopilot can go out and like end to end find leads, or like find next podcast guests or whatever it is that your podcast would require. And then that's kind of like the future that we're building towards as well.
Okay, this sounds great for my outreach. So I'm thinking, can you show me like right from opening Kairos to getting me a warm lead? What does that process look like? Can you take me through it step by step?
Yeah, totally. So you go to kairos.computer, and then once you're logged in, yeah, so it's a very familiar like text-like interface, and you can just tell it what you want it to do. Like I had actually done this a little while ago, so that we might not have to wait as it works through. But this was the podcast that I think Rahul had started previously, and so I told Kairos, I said, hey, my friend built this, and he's now building a new podcast for startups that were founded in Singapore, whose founders are from. Can you find such startup founders' LinkedIn profiles? Say 10 started less than 1 year ago, pretty new startups, or something like this. Like you can pretty much like define what kind of leads or outbound or whatever it is that you'd want to do. And then Kairos will pretty much go out and do this thing. And the way it works right now is it has its own computer. So the moment you give this prompt, we handle like all of the virtual machine sandboxing for Kairos. So this doesn't run on your computer. Like this is actually Kairos's own computer. It can decide to use a browser whenever it wants. In the future, it can go out and use applications on the computer. And the best part is I don't actually need to have this tab running. Like I can go ahead and close this tab and close my laptop actually, and Kairos will still be running in the background. And so this is what I also meant with like this autopilot idea, where I've not necessarily told Kairos exactly how I go about and find these founders. I'm just telling Kairos like these very general instructions of like, hey, this is the new podcast that I'm building, and these are the kinds of guests that I want to bring on, and can you go out and find them? And so that's kind of like the idea with Kairos. And the way we've designed the experience is the moment it would finish something like this, it would just go back and then also text you. So let me actually show that to you as well. So if it needs any clarifications, it'll come back and text you like an actual intern via text, or like if you use WhatsApp, it would come back and just create this list. So I actually ran this sometime back, and I think I asked it to create like 5 really high quality profiles, and then it created this document for me. And I thought it was pretty interesting. Like it seemed pretty relevant. And then all of this can run parallel. Like you can have another Kairos sessions, like actually go out and reach out to these founders. So you can say, hey, can you go to my LinkedIn and connect with all of these founders? Kairos will spin up another virtual sandbox and then go out and do this task. So you can have like, you can pretty much parallelize work at the speed, and the only limiting constraint is like the thought of what work you'd want to do, pretty much.
I have one question though. Was it using a different LinkedIn account while it was running all the queries? When you're asking it to connect to connect to your LinkedIn, is
Yeah.
that a different action? How does that work?
Oh yeah, so that it still uses mine. So you can see that it's on my LinkedIn. Like this is signed into my LinkedIn. It's gonna go here to all of these founders. Gonna connect with all of them, and then at the end, once it's done, it'll just come back and tell me. This one I think has gone out and created like a bunch of founder leads that I can connect with again on LinkedIn. And I can actually tell you like an example of where I used this some time ago. I actually wanted to partner with some YC founders to like work collaboratively build some videos. And so all of these messages that I actually sent to these folks were automated with Kairos. Like I just told Kairos, hey, go to like the YC fall 25 batch and then send them this message where we can kind of co-partner, like showcase Kairos as the product and then also showcase their product, and then tell them about that in like a note while you're connecting.
So can you personalize the messages?
Yeah, you can personalize it. So the reason you can do that is because Kairos can go to like the person's LinkedIn account. They can find out other information. Like I could have changed this prompt to say, instead of just connecting with them, go through their recent posts and then find out what they're talking about. And based off of that, tell them what my podcast is and how the both of these things could work together, where they like the founders can get something out of it, or if nothing, like I just generally love to talk to them, right? And then you give it this prompt, and Kairos will like look through the posts or like things that this person is building, and then personalize the message based off of that. It's just like limited by the
Yeah.
prompt that you give Kairos, if that makes sense.
So speaking of the prompt, right? So earlier you mentioned you can just generalize and give a vague instruction. So would it then end up getting you exactly what you want in the sense of like that very specific industry, very specific persona in terms of, let's say, reaching out? Or do you have to be specific?
So the more specific you are, the better it gets.
Okay.
In fact, one of the features that we have on Kairos is like this screen share feature where you can just share your screen and then Kairos can pretty much learn how you do a certain task and then go from there, if that makes sense. So if you do your LinkedIn research a specific way, you can share your screen and kind of explain that flow. So you don't have to spend time prompting because like most people are
Yeah.
not actually very good at prompting. So we provide this
Yeah.
feature, which actually like a lot of folks end up liking and using a lot.
Yeah. That sounds super cool. But then I'm very curious. How does that work actually?
So we kind of figured out a way where we got these models to understand video, and from that, like it's not actually super complicated. To the thing is, you don't want to necessarily repeat the actions that were shown on the video to the pixel, if that makes sense. Like it's like if I show a LinkedIn workflow, I don't expect Kairos to click on a specific pixel position, which is what a lot of our folks assume. The way it works is like the models just understand what's happening in the video when you're sharing your screen, and then it distills that into like a really really good prompt that we then pass to Kairos. And so then it simplifies your process of not having to write this like really long prompt, and all you do is just like teach your intern in some sense.
Yeah. And so there's this Perplexity computer, and Claude Cowork to some extent with the new features like dispatch and other things, right? Are they getting closer to what your approach of like having a separate sort of computer?
I think a lot of things would end up converging. You probably want something that is simple to use. Right now, I think Claude's thing is still tied to your computer. Like the
Yeah.
agents don't go off and run on their own. But I think dispatch is particularly an interesting feature. With Perplexity Computer, I haven't used it, sorry, so I won't be able to comment much. But I know it is not super cheap to actually get started with it. Like last I checked, they had like a $200 barrier to
Yeah.
just start.
So yesterday I was checking it. They've brought it down to that pro subscription, which is like the $20
Oh,
sub $20 one.
got it, got it. Yeah, I think that's probably the right move. But the dispatch function is actually interesting because one of the things that we've been thinking about with Kairos is like for instance I told
Yeah.
Kairos to look at Vertex's investments on PitchBook, and then it realized it doesn't have access to PitchBook. So then I just said, okay, connect, and then I can log in and then it can go out and do these tasks. So the VCs who actually use Kairos right now, they have like all of these tools connected, And then they tell Kairos every morning, go out and do this thing. Like find out like the latest investments that have happened or which are the new companies that raised their seed round, add them to my tracking list or whatever the workflow is. I think the more interesting thing we are exploring with Kairos is almost like I think OpenClaw has an equivalent of this. They call it like a heartbeat, where what happens is Kairos can like start itself up like every hour or something, and then say, hey, let me look at new companies. Like I know enough information about my user that I can go out and just do useful work for them unprompted, like where you don't necessarily have to prompt Kairos to do something. If I've told Kairos enough about, oh, I want to reach out to certain guests for my podcast, maybe Kairos is like, oh yeah, after like the podcast ends, maybe it's helpful to have like a blog post that explains the product or goes from the podcast video to to like a blog post, right? And so Kairos can just start working on that without even telling you. And then once it's done, it'll just come and text you quickly saying, hey, I also did this. And so that's kind of like, I think, an interesting direction that we're probably going to take. And I think a lot of these autopilot tools would also end up moving towards.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the future.
Got it. But I have another question. See, when I do all of this with Kairos, wouldn't my LinkedIn account get banned? Wouldn't it get flagged in some sense? Would that lead to issues?
So it's kind of a gray area, is the honest answer right now. And the reason for that is like most of these tools generally don't like any sort of automation done inside of them. And like the reason it works right now with Kairos is that we have this like actual computer sitting on the cloud. So none of these tools actually know that, hey, this is a bot that's working. But that's definitely a real question. I think like it's just that this part of the problem will probably get solved only once like agent adoption increases so much that LinkedIn realizes, oh shit, we're not getting traffic from humans anymore. We're getting traffic from like people's interns or like people's AI agents, right? And at that point, they're like, okay, we might as well just make everything just like super accessible. I think that's probably what these companies are going to do. Until then, it's going to remain like a gray area where as long as you can like figure out a way to get these models to access the website, like and the models can then replicate all of their clicks and activity on those websites, it should be pretty good for now.
So just for layman understanding, see, when you say it's a computer in the cloud, like, can you break it down for somebody who does not understand that from a basic perspective?
It's basically just a virtual machine, right? So we use a bunch of services, all of them hinged on AWS's services. And because it is a computer, you can run pretty much any application on it. Like this one is a Linux computer. It has a Chrome browser, it has a terminal. You can install a bunch of other applications that Linux supports. There are companies that are specifically building this out, like a easy way to set up a computer for your agent on the cloud. And that's like its entirely other like market, like infrastructure place for AI agents. But it's super simple. Like it's just giving your agent its own computer. But instead of buying it, you kind of rent it per hour or like per minute. Essentially, that's kind of like the way these companies operate.
Awesome, thank you.
So, how do I verify it's reaching exactly the persona that I want to reach? And then, like, have one of your customers sort of assess the quality in terms of maybe conversion from those leads?
Oh yeah, totally. So verifying is generally a hard task because the breadth of tasks that we'd want to support with Kairos is really broad. And so for most tasks, like even this LinkedIn one, how would you know that the 10 leads that it got were the best? You would have to like review it manually, right? And so that's kind of like what the verification part of the work has come down to right now. From our user base, it depends on the task that you give Kairos right now. Like right now, if you tell Kairos manage my LinkedIn or whatever that's supposed to mean, it's probably not going to do a very good job. But if you give it like one of our users actually tried this and it was interesting. They had a product, like some vibe coded thing that they built, and they were like, oh, I want to get users for this. And so Kairos was like, you should try and distribute it on Reddit. And we support Reddit as one of our integrations. So the user connected their Reddit account, and then Kairos is like, okay, I can run every 6 hours to try and like promote your post, promote your product across like various different subreddits that I think would like really benefit from your product. And Reddit is like super against promotion, so Kairos still figured out a way to like promote these products. And the user was like, I was genuinely surprised when Kairos came back and I could see like traffic trickling into my product, like few users coming in and trying out my tool every day, my the Reddit karma started going up, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting use case. So the verification part and the quality of Kairos is very much like a explore problem right now, where we are also trying to figure out what are the tasks that Kairos is really good at, and so are our users. The ones that we find where Kairos succeeds really well, we like try and talk about it, and then those are the use cases that people can come in and start off with. Like if this one has an interesting use case, I can just share it and then create it, compile it to a prompt, and then I can share that prompt, so then you can like use it without having to actually type that prompt in some sense. And so that's kind of like where we're at with like the verification and quality, and all of it hinges on like how good the models are, and then how good the agent harness is around it.
Okay, when you say agent harness, what do you mean?
Yeah, so when you use these models, like whether it's a chat gpt model or whether it's like an anthropic model, the model is basically just an input output machine, right? Like you give it like a piece of text, or like an image or whatever the input is, and then basis that you ask it something, and then the model gives you an output, which is generally text. uh, but that's just the role of the model. You still need to have like a loop, or like some sort of a program that makes this model agentic, if that makes sense. So the agent harness is essentially just the program that you would write around this model, so that the model can do all of these things. For instance, this if this is my input to the model, and after it says let me search the web, what does it do? It tries to use a browser. So then it can, when it uses the browser, it's actually using the agent harness, because that's not part of the model itself. It's like connecting the model to a browser. Or in our case, we give it like all of these different tools. Like all of the stuff that you see happening here is a tool that we give these models. And so maybe like an analogy is like the model is like a brain. It can't really, apart from thinking, it can't really do much. But when you
Yeah,
connect it to a body, like
legs.
you kind of give it like the ability to interact and do things. So that's kind of like the role of the agent harness.
Yeah,
That's a great analogy.
yeah. So, okay, for someone wanting to use this, right? Does the cost make sense? Because I was talking to a founder. He spent some $8,000 on OpenClaw. So he has his five virtual assistants doing a bunch of things. It's like a chief of staff kind of thing for him.
This is probably the most interesting question on my mind as well, because these models are like really hard to run. I'm going to try and like explain why I think this is a tough problem, especially if you're building something like this, like fairly broad agentic product. Going back to the point on like verifiability and quality, right? If there's a new person who's coming in and they don't necessarily know how good Kairos is, or like what can it do, they are not willing to like pay a lot of money for it, right? This is predominantly wrong with OpenClaw. Like people are willing to spend hundreds of dollars to go out and buy these Mac Minis and then set this up. Or like in the example that you shared, your friend was willing to spend upwards of thousands. But like most people are not going to do that, right? And so you need to promise people something which in their minds is a lot more valuable than it would cost them to run it through these models. And these models are expensive. Like if you look at the pricing for any of these top models, and especially like when you let them run for like hours on end, which is something that people do on Kairos, you start running into like bills over $100, right? And so it's a hard problem. We don't necessarily have the solution right now. One of the things that we've explored is like trying out a bunch of open source models. The issue is the product then just doesn't feel as good, because the open source models just are dumber than the state of the art ones from OpenAI or Anthropic. But I think the solution there is something like what OpenAI is offering right now, where you can like sign in with your OpenAI account and it just bills your usage on OpenAI. So you don't actually end up paying for Kairos. You just sign in with OpenAI and your usage gets deducted from your OpenAI usage. And then anything on top of that, what you do with Kairos is like a $20 subscription or something. But that's just an idea. We're still experimenting with it. I think this is a hard question for anyone trying to build agentic products, because all of your value is tied to usage. And the value of your product is only defined at the end of a cycle. So even if this thing runs for like an hour, I don't know if Kairos is going to be useful until after I see the results. If Kairos is not useful, then the value I get is zero. But I've still spent so many tokens in running Kairos for an hour, right? So how do you justify that? Is a difficult question. I don't know. I don't necessarily have the best answer.
Yeah, so which so naturally flows to the next the one question, right? See, what kind of businesses are best suited for Kairos?
Yeah. So
When does it make most sense?
yeah. So right now our ICP is predominantly solopreneurs. So like literally one man shops. These people are handling like sales, outbound, like lead qualification, customer service, marketing, all of that themselves. Like they're a great ICP to begin with because they have just so much work on their plate that they're not able to get done. And the value proposition for them is, look, you can come in and set up like any workflow you'd like with Kairos in under 10 minutes, like new products that you can sell for your Amazon business, right? And then contact those sellers every day, or like negotiate prices, whatever it is. Like you come up with the task, and then Kairos goes out and does that for these specific people for places where it's an easy win for Kairos right now. So people extract that value from the product, and then we also end up talking to them because they are very open to sharing what they actually use Kairos for. So we learn from their insights and then go back and make the product better if anything fails.
Yeah. Since you mentioned that you talk to them, what is one, let's say, power user flow that you've repeatedly observed that where people are getting stellar results? Like any specific workflow that people are raving about?
So the most interesting thing that I saw was with Kairos, you can set up these like scheduled tasks in some sense. And so a lot of folks, what they do is they come in and they say, like, there was like a Airbnb property manager, and for some reason these property managers tend to hang out on Facebook. And so he was like, hey Kairos, go to Facebook and join all these property management groups in my area in Florida, and like tell them about my Airbnb business, like talk to them, figure out how things are going, see how they try and get more leads, like just keep doing this research. And then he told this to Kairos. Kairos was like, okay, I'll run this every 3 hours. So every 3 hours it would go and do this like on repeat. And then the last bit of the loop was when, like, at the end of the day, like, tell me any interesting insights from these groups via text. So this guy just comes in, tells like this really massive task to Kairos, and then just Kairos just like keeps running. The person doesn't even need to have Kairos open. And then at the end of the day, Kairos is just like, oh, by the way, like you can like increase your Airbnb leads if you do XYZ. And the person was super impressed. When I spoke to him, he was like, damn, this is great. So the general formula right now is like something that you'd run, that Kairos would run for you every X hours or every X days. And then it's something that is still like fairly broad. Like you don't necessarily have to explain what you want Kairos to do end to end. Kairos can like figure that part out. And then the closing of the loop is Kairos will update you via text or WhatsApp. And then if you want Kairos to update its workflow or do something differently, you can just text it. So that's kind of been like a really like a real unlock in terms of like what people imagine these products to be able to do right now.
Got it. So if a business owner is, signing up on Kairos and setting it up, what is your recommendation for what they do in the first 1 hour? Like any best practices you can tell them?
Yeah, I think the first one, like the first like 5 minutes of like using the product is just like go back and forth with Kairos, like, hey Kairos, what can you do for me? And then like just share more information about your business with Kairos. Kairos itself will come up with things that it can do for you that it thinks is super valuable. And then once like people start imagining like, oh, I can, because like right now the thing is people know what ChatGPT can do. I ask a question, I get an email back, or whatever it is, right? With Kairos right now, it's like I don't know what you can do for me. So when they come in, they just ask Kairos, like, hey, I run XYZ business. This is what I do. Can you handle, let's say, sales outbound? Like get emails or like email like 20 clients every day. Then Kairos can go back and forth. You can explicitly figure out what kinds of emails or whom you want to target, and then Kairos can go out and do that. Or whether it's like on a tool like LinkedIn, you kind of work together with Kairos to figure out what you'd want to automate.
Yeah, this is great, Manas. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And for anyone listening, if you find Kairos interesting, check it out.
Totally. Thanks so much for having me on this podcast, guys. Kairos is still super early, so it's probably going to bug out here and there. If any of this sounds interesting and you'd like love to chat, I'm always down.